I finished up the final batch of documents that Ethan had given me, essential for his management of an important portfolio under my supervision. This portfolio included the assets of Alexander Matthews, a billionaire investor and entrepreneur we all called Alex Matthews. Alex was notorious for using his wealth for hostile takeovers, buying up stocks to seize control. Once he succeeded, he'd quickly sell off assets to boost his investment's value, often involving unsuspecting individuals and not caring who got hurt in the process. As Alex's lawyer and legal adversary, I managed to keep Alexander's dealings honest and out of trouble with the SEC and other federal regulators. This kept Alex amassing more wealth, which benefited our firm, Harris, Mitchell, and Carson Inc. Ethan also made great strides in managing other client portfolios, aiming to gain full control within the next 2 weeks, wrapping up the 3-month process of transferring all my clients except my special ones. Only Ethan, Lauren Mitchell, and Bradley Carson knew about my impending retirement. I reminded myself once again that it was time to let go and focus on personal time. As a founding partner of the firm along with Lauren and Clay, we had grown it from a small law office into one of Columbus, Ohio's largest and most influential. However, this success came at a cost to my personal life, straining my marriage to Natalie and our family. Last month, we celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. Natalie and I have 2 children, 19-year-old Sam and 18-year-old Chloe, both thriving in college. Despite our material comforts, I realized Natalie's disinterest in our love life was a significant issue. While my desire remained strong, Natalie blamed her low libido on a temporary phase, promising to discuss it with her doctor during her next checkup nearly a year ago. Our love life hadn't improved, and I, frustrated, chose to let the matter rest without further discussion. What troubled me even more was Natalie's frequent trips back to her hometown of Mansfield, Ohio. She claimed it was to care for her ailing mother and help her sister, Sophia, who lived there. Both still resided in Mansfield, and Sophia, divorced and alone, appreciated Natalie's help during these visits. Natalie felt it was the least she could do to relieve Sophia and give her some free time. These trips began 6 months ago and now occurred every other week, with Natalie leaving on Thursday mornings and returning late Sunday nights. She kept in touch by calling every evening at 9 o'clock and ensuring her cell was always accessible. However, this left me alone for 3 or 4 days every other week, a situation I had grown to dislike. Natalie left this morning for her latest trip, leaving me alone once again. Despite my disappointment, I told Natalie I was working on a big surprise that would be ready in a couple of weeks. I even tried to spark her interest by mentioning Lauren's involvement, hoping her curiosity or jealousy over Lauren might make her stay to find out the secret. Natalie showed little curiosity, and I, unsurprised, let it go and left her to finish packing. After our usual goodbyes, I headed to work, knowing she would be gone within the hour. Later that day, I closed my office, chatted with Megan, my secretary, and walked down the carpeted hall to Lauren's office for a chat before heading home. I knocked once and pushed the door open, a habit accepted by all partners used to my unannounced visits. I greeted Lauren and suggested we wrap up work for the day and grab a drink. Lauren said she was reluctant to go home to an empty house. Another colleague, Mark, was waiting for her as they planned to attend their son's school play, where Mark Jr. had the lead role in Pirates of Doom. I teased Lauren about the play but acknowledged that parents are naturally biased about their children's performances. Lauren laughed and agreed. At 46, happily married for 10 years, she reassured me about the project's progress and declined Ethan's assistance, noting that everything was on track. Worried about my upcoming retirement, Lauren said she hoped to talk me out of it, emphasizing my role in the company's success. I praised Lauren's contributions and assured her that she, along with Clay and the younger team members, would continue to excel. I commended the younger generation's dedication, especially mentioning Ethan, and considering offering Emma Harper a partnership in the future. Lauren said she liked Ethan and Emma, and mentioned that Anil would also be at the upcoming party. I welcomed Anil and said goodnight to Lauren, planning to see her the next day. I drove to my estate home in the Columbus suburbs, located on a 5-acre lot and spanning just over 5,000 square feet. It featured a hot tub flowing into a pool, a cabana, 2 tennis courts, and a spacious garden with flowers and shrubs blooming throughout the summer and into the fall. With the kids gone, Natalie had let go of the cook and maid, leaving the house mostly empty. Acknowledging it was too large for just the 2 of us, Natalie suggested it might be time to move into something smaller. Maybe we should give it a couple more years, she proposed. I parked in the 4-car garage and entered the kitchen, putting a frozen dinner in the microwave before changing into casual clothes for the evening. As I came back down the stairs, the landline rang, and I hoped it was about one of my ads, as it was too early for Natalie to call. Answering, I was pleased to discuss my boat, a 32-feet powered sailboat moored at Lake Erie in the summer and fall, and winter stored at a facility on the lake. After a productive discussion with someone who had taken the boat for a run, with the marina owner covering for me, we finalized the deal. An agreement was made to send a cashier's check for the agreed price to a post office box I provided. Once the check was received, the boat's title would be available at the marina. The buyer had already checked the title when they took the boat for a test run, and everything was in order. Natalie, who never liked the boat and hadn't gone out with me on it for years, would be pleased that it was sold. With my Jaguar and Audi promised to the highest bidders, there wasn't much left to worry about. In 2 weeks, everything would be ready for my retirement. The house might take a bit longer to sell, but by then, Natalie and I would be comfortably settled in the smaller bungalow, ready for showings. I had already moved some furniture there, and we could buy anything else we needed. I ate my frozen dinner without much thought and decided to unwind with some mindless TV and snacks. I grabbed a cold Miller Lite and headed to the entertainment room, opting for some adult content. However, the movie lacked creativity, with the actors repeating the same dull actions, failing to engage me. As I watched, I found myself wondering why these films were so unimaginative, offering nothing but cheap titillation. At 9 o'clock, Natalie called. I asked if she had any trouble getting there, and she assured me that the trip was smooth. She mentioned her mom was doing slightly better, but Sophia was stressed. Natalie suggested staying an extra day if it was okay with me. Despite a knot forming in my stomach, I told her to do whatever she thought was best. I mentioned that I might stay at work a bit longer since it was lonely without her. I also asked if she needed anything for Monday, noting that she didn't take much with her. Natalie explained she had things left behind and reassured me she'd be fine. She then brought up the surprise I had mentioned earlier, expressing some curiosity. Surprised by her interest, I told her it was on track, with Lauren nearly finished with her part. Natalie promised to call the next night and said goodnight, ending with a simple, "I love you." Noticing her eagerness to end the call, I realized she didn't really reciprocate my, "I love you." Still, I smiled, figuring she was just busy with her mom. Thinking about Natalie's family dynamics, I noted how dysfunctional they were, and how I never liked her mother or Sophia. Sophia had been divorced for cheating, which made my weekend alone even more frustrating. To pass the time, I called the kids and talked with them for over an hour, reminding them of our plans for 2 weeks later. After that, I let myself go, falling asleep on the couch and waking up in the middle of the night with a stiff neck. I went to bed and slept dreamlessly, a rare but welcome change. Lately, my dreams had been anything but pleasant. The next 2 weeks flew by, with me working hard to wrap up all my cases and ensure Ethan was prepared to take over. I spent most of that second week calling my clients to let them know about my retirement. Most were happy for me and willing to work with Ethan. A few needed reassurances from either Lauren or Bradley, and I made sure they were contacted right away. Everything was set by that final Thursday when Natalie left for Mansfield. I had managed to keep my retirement plans a secret from her, as she rarely asked about my work anymore. She had also forgotten about the surprise, and I didn't bring it up before she left. I planned to mention it on Sunday when she called to say she was heading back, especially if she decided to stay an extra day. Either way, I was ready. Friday was my last day at work, a whirlwind of activity. With Megan's help, we cleaned up the office and transferred all the paper files to Ethan. After a few more calls, I told Megan to forward all my new calls to Ethan, sticking to the plan. Ethan was taking over my secretary, Megan, as they worked well together. My last task was to tell Lauren to set things in motion. She confirmed everything was ready, despite heading to the courthouse later that morning. Lauren promised to be back in time for my retirement party at the Haven Hotel. Everyone knew Natalie wouldn't be there, but that didn't delay the proceedings. Looking forward to a good time, I left after lunch to tackle a few remaining tasks. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, everything was in place. The final papers for the house were signed, and the movers were on their way. set to finish by late Saturday afternoon. After they were done, a cleaning crew I hired would arrive to thoroughly clean the place by evening. I promised them a bonus if they finished on time. The realtors assured me that the for sale sign would be up by late tomorrow, and they already had a list of interested buyers who wanted to view the property starting Monday. I had priced it competitively for a quick sale. My last task was ensuring all financial arrangements were sorted out. Natalie and I had separate accounts in addition to our joint ones, each with our own credit card. I insisted on carrying only one card each, disapproving of running a credit balance. Natalie, good with money, was never frivolous. She managed our accounts well, knowing about my private business accounts but unaware of my firm's accounts. Over the years, she never inquired or remembered. Now, I closed all our joint accounts, transferring the retirement funds to a new brokerage. I intended to handle our joint finances in cash temporarily, at least until everything settled down, especially since our new home would be out of the state. I moved our accounts beyond the U.S., having already set up an online account with an international bank that had branches in Europe and South America. I was confident that Natalie would adapt easily to the change, given her intelligence with financial matters. Finally, I confirmed that our tickets were in hand, planning to spend the next several months at a beautiful resort in Costa Rica. Sun, sand, swimming, sailing, horseback riding, the place had it all. I had taken a solo trip to the resort to verify its authenticity and instructed Megan to book the trip and make all the necessary reservations. I wanted everything to be confirmed by the time of my retirement. I've been quite successful, accumulating substantial wealth from handling high-profile cases for affluent clients and charging accordingly. My clients, recognizing my expertise, retained me with significant retainers. I invested my earnings in high-risk accounts, yielding considerable returns over the years. As a lawyer, I used my legal knowledge to move most of my money into offshore accounts, all legally. These accounts remained unknown to Natalie, and she would be astonished if she knew their value. Importantly, this money was outside the U.S., not subject to U.S. tax laws or courts. I made sure everyone at the firm kept this quiet. Natalie had suggested retirement over the past year, so I believed my decision would please her, especially given her complaints about the time I spent at work. I told everyone it would be a surprise for her, planning to announce it on Sunday night when she returned. I was confident she would be home Sunday, intending to reveal the surprise during her morning call. So far, everything had gone perfectly. The retirement party was enjoyable. I danced with all the women and chatted with all the men, sharing war stories of our most interesting cases. Ethan stayed close, ensuring nothing important slipped by me. I thought highly of Ethan and saw him as a valuable asset to the firm. Lauren and Clay, who knew all my plans, were sworn to secrecy. Lauren subtly expressed her pleasure with my actions. We danced, discussing the final steps. Lauren assured me everything was ready for the surprise, documenting checks and amounts to ensure Natalie's surprise and my satisfaction. I expressed my confidence that Natalie would enjoy the surprise. Lauren sarcastically whispered her agreement. I laughed and shared that I had tickets for a Costa Rica resort, with plans to leave Sunday night. I promised to call her with a permanent number and mentioned my new cell would be active in the meantime. I suggested Mark and Lauren do something similar. Lauren replied that she enjoyed her work too much to quit just yet. I encouraged her to tell Clay I was sorry for not including him in all our plans. I stayed at the party until nearly midnight before leaving. I missed Natalie's call but found a voicemail. She informed me she was going to her mom's for the night and asked me not to call to avoid waking her mother. Natalie explained that her mother was tired and needed rest. She promised to call the next night and asked me to be home. As expected, she wouldn't call tonight after leaving her message. I spent the evening packing my clothes and making sure Natalie's belongings were neatly packed. With limited time before Sunday night, I aimed to avoid return trips after the movers finished tomorrow. Carefully and methodically, I packed her things, ensuring everything went smoothly without room for complaints. I planned to stay at the bungalow that night and ensure all calls were forwarded to my new cell starting tomorrow. Once everything was moved to the bungalow, I wrapped up my tasks, made a phone call to confirm the last piece of the surprise was in place, and then went to bed, pleasantly tired from the party and on edge, hoping nothing would go wrong. Saturday marked the packing and moving of the furniture from our home. Though somewhat sad, I shrugged my shoulders and left the movers to their work. I was going back to the bungalow to meet our kids, who were arriving around noon. I needed to go over my plans with them to avoid surprising them too much. I had hinted at my retirement, but withheld details about Costa Rica or anything else. Now was the time to bring them up to date. I needed them to promise not to call Natalie and spoil the surprise. I thought they would be okay with that. When they arrived, I welcomed them inside, sat them down, and began filling them in, making it short and to the point. I answered all their questions and provided details when they asked for them. Neither Sam nor Chloe was happy with what I was doing, but I assured them their college tuition was covered and that they would always be welcome home, wherever that might be. I reassured them that my retirement was something Natalie and I had discussed and agreed upon as the right time. They wanted to talk to Natalie, but I made them promise to wait until Sunday night when she got home. They finally agreed. We all went out to dinner that evening and stayed quiet when I answered Natalie's 9 o'clock call. She kept it short as usual but didn't mention staying any longer, so I still expected her Sunday night. After the call, the kids once again discussed my plans, wanting to be sure I was still committed. I assured them I was fine. When they went to sleep in the spare room with twin beds, I made a phone call to confirm the movers were done and the cleaning crew was scheduled. Both were affirmative, and I was pleased. One final call, and I was done for the night. Sunday was a day when little had to be done, as most everything was ready. I checked the house and found it in order. The movers and cleaners had left the place spotless and ready to show. I drove back to the bungalow and waited for Natalie's call to tell me she was ready to leave. I expected her to call at her usual time between 10 and 10:30. The kids had gone out to be with some of their friends from home. I was alone when Natalie called, and I picked up on the first ring. Trying to stay calm, I asked if she was ready to come home. Her voice was tense as she said she wanted to stay a few more days to help her sister Sophia get some things done. I could tell she expected me to object because she knew I wouldn't be happy about it. For the first time, the anger I'd been bottling up for months started to break free. She wanted to stay longer? Why? I knew the reason, didn't I? I'd known for over 3 months, long enough to start planning my surprise. Now it was time to put my plan into action. As I made this decision, my anger finally surfaced. It was hard to speak without shouting, but I managed to tell Natalie that I didn't mind her staying a few more nights, sarcastically mentioning her lover, Ryan. I confronted her about her affairs with Ryan and another man, Matt, and told her how much it bothered me. My voice rose in anger, and I struggled to keep from yelling. I accused her of having these relationships for the past 6 months or longer, and expressed my frustration at having to pretend everything was fine. There was silence on the other end, followed by a sob, and then the line went dead. I stared at the phone, realizing she had hung up. That was unexpected. Placing the phone on the table, my hand shook with remaining anger. She had hung up, leaving me without an outlet for my pent-up rage. Slumping into a chair, my phone rang sharply again. The disposable phone I had bought for this purpose kept ringing since it didn't have voicemail. Finally, I picked it up and pushed the talk button. Yes, was all I could manage. My anger had burned out with the sudden end of the call. I had been ready for an argument, a shouting match. Her abrupt hang-up had extinguished my anger like water on a flame. Now I felt numb, dead inside, and overwhelmed by the pain I had been holding back. Without the chance to release my anger and hurt, I was helpless against the piercing pain gripping my heart. Sophia's angry voice came through the tiny speaker, urging me not to hang up and expressing concern for Natalie, who she said was almost hysterical. She demanded to know what I had said to Natalie and what I had done to cause her extreme reaction. Redirecting my anger toward Sophia, I saw her as a partner in Natalie's betrayal and equally guilty. I sarcastically told Sophia that I had just told Natalie to stay as long as she liked with her lover, Ryan Foster. I accused both Sophia and Natalie of being involved with Matt Wilson and Ryan, detailing their meetings at a motel. My anger grew, but I stopped myself from screaming at Sophia and dismissed her plea to let Natalie explain. Sophia tried to defend Natalie, insisting it wasn't what I thought, and calling it a stupid mistake for which she was also to blame. She begged me not to do anything drastic and to wait until Natalie could talk to me. I remained firm, revealing that someone would be there when Natalie arrived, but it wouldn't be me. I accused Natalie of discarding our marriage and said she wanted to continue her affair with Ryan. Despite Sophia's pleas, I informed her that I had already told our children about the situation, including the weekends Natalie claimed to be caring for her mother. I said the kids had taken the news surprisingly well. In response to Sophia's desperate plea for hope and reconsideration, I reiterated that it was Natalie and Sophia who had thrown away our family. I said goodbye to Sophia and mentioned that I had said goodbye to her mother, noting that she never liked me and was probably laughing her skinny butt off now. Disconnecting the call, I looked around the small bungalow for the last time. Natalie will love it, I thought to myself, then laughed at the thought. I turned off all the lights, put the spare keys on the table along with a letter to Natalie, and went out the front door. I pulled the door shut, got into my rental car, and drove to Megan's apartment. She was waiting in front of the building when I arrived. I got out, loaded her 3 suitcases into the back of the car, and held the door open as she climbed in. She smiled up at me as I shut the car door, and I walked around to the driver's side and got in. Megan was ready for this. She mentioned how challenging it had been seeing me every day at the firm without being able to touch or talk to me. She credited Natalie for throwing me away, allowing her to snap me up and enjoy our weekends together. Here's what I found out later from Natalie. I shuddered once and picked up the phone. The conversation started as usual, with my husband asking if I was coming home. I sounded so normal, reminding my elf that this was a world he knew nothing about. That gave me the courage to do what I wanted. I went for it, asking Dex if he minded me staying a couple more days. I glanced at Sophia, and her reassuring grin told me I was doing the right thing. As I waited for his usual response to let me do whatever made me happy, I reminded myself that he wouldn't mind. He would never know what I was truly doing, because I'd never let him find out. It would hurt him too much. I loved Dex, that was genuine, but our intimacy had lost its spark. Now, I had found an outlet that let me keep loving my husband while enjoying a different kind of excitement with someone else. With Ryan, I discovered a wild side of myself I never knew existed. I was thoroughly caught up in the forbidden pleasure he gave me. I was proud of myself, my own desires fueling my urge to spend just 1 or 2 more nights with Ryan and Matt. I was already imagining our night together, feeling warm at the thought, until Dex's words came through the phone, shattering my world. Dex's voice was calm but cutting as he questioned why he should mind me wanting to spend more nights with my lover Ryan, and mentioned my involvement with another man, Matt. He expressed uncertainty about how long it had been going on, 6 months or longer. He conveyed his frustration, feeling like he had to pretend everything was fine. I was stunned into silence, unable to respond to Dex's accusations. Panic gripped me and I slammed the phone down, letting out a loud sob, just one before the reality hit me. Oh God, he knew. My life was over. I was going to lose the only man I ever truly loved. I had to get home. I had to leave immediately to stop him from doing something drastic. I grabbed my car keys and ran out of Sophia's kitchen. Starting my car, I backed out of her driveway and headed straight for the interstate, pushing my car to its limits. The usual 3.5 to 4 hour drive seemed like an eternity. I didn't care about speed limits or police patrols. I had to get home before Dex left me. I had to talk to him, to tell him that I loved him and that I had made a terrible mistake. Ryan and Matt meant nothing to me anymore. I would never see them or Sophia again if that's what it took. I rehearsed my words over and over, desperate to convince Dex not to leave me. I had been foolish, seduced by Sophia's lifestyle and her promises that my desire would return if I let go with someone I didn't care about. She said it would reawaken my passion, and Dex would benefit. I believed it, but then I got caught up in the thrill of doing something forbidden. I thought it would revive me, and I could bring that back to my marriage. Dex had to understand. He just had to. 100 miles into the drive, I started to ask myself the questions Dex would undoubtedly ask. Why didn't any of that passion carry over? Why hadn't we made love in those 6 months since my affair began? I had no answers. I needed to find a way to explain. As I pulled into our driveway, my heart sank seeing 4 cars parked there. I recognized my children's cars, which was unexpected, and a sense of dread washed over me. I drove around the cars onto the grass, slammed to a stop, and bolted toward the house. As I neared the front door, someone got out of one of the unfamiliar cars to intercept me. Ignoring him, I fumbled with my keys. He tried to stop me, but I shoved him aside and tried the key in the lock. It didn't work. Desperately, I tried again and again, but it wouldn't turn. Frustrated, I threw the key onto the porch, buried my face in my hands, and started crying. Turning to the door, I pounded on it with my fists until the pain forced me to stop. I looked around and saw the man who had gotten out of the car still standing there. He asked if I was Mrs. Harris, and I nodded. He handed me an envelope and said in a low voice, "You are served, ma'am." Then he took out a smaller envelope and handed it to me. "These are the keys to your new residence. The address is inside and the property is yours without burden. You will find the deed and necessary information inside." I took both envelopes, staring at him in shock. My mind was numb with sadness and pain. He reached into his coat pocket and handed me a legal-sized white envelope. "This contains several checks amounting to the current savings and checking accounts, which have been closed. This house has been listed for sale, and the proceeds will go to you once the sale is completed. All of this is included in the divorce statements, and the terms are spelled out very clearly." The man closed his briefcase and prepared to leave. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a business card. "In case you forget, this is the name of your husband's attorney." He moved away, got into his car, spoke briefly to someone in another car I didn't recognize, and then backed out and left. I was stunned, holding the envelopes the man had given me. I glanced down at the business card and saw that it was Lauren Mitchell. Anger surged through me, but it quickly subsided. Lauren was a problem only in my own head, a wedge I had used over the years to make Dex feel guilty. Now I knew better, but it didn't help to see her walking toward me. "Hello, Natalie. You're not looking so well today," Lauren said. "Dex asked me to handle things in his absence. In case you're wondering and have questions, I can give you some answers. First, Dex retired effective Friday. We had a big party for him. Lots of people came to see him off. Too bad you missed it, but you had other priorities, didn't you? Second, this house has been turned over to a realtor for sale. You signed a power of attorney some time ago, and Dex used it to transfer the title into his name. But don't worry, the proceeds are all yours. Dex left it to you in the divorce. He also bought you a nice bungalow, fully furnished. Your children can take you there. Finally, Dex gave me full power to act on his behalf in the divorce and all his affairs here in the States. He has left the country and doesn't intend to return for some time." Her words were like hammer blows, each one driving the stake deeper into my heart. I was gasping for breath as my life collapsed around me. I opened my mouth to ask questions, but nothing came out. I realized that I had been betrayed by the man I had so easily disrespected and taken for granted. Dex was the only man I had ever truly loved, and now I had lost his love. I had no idea what to do. Suddenly, I felt more alone than I had in the last 20 years. I had my children and my life, but my anchor was gone. "I can't know why you did this to Derek, Natalie," Lauren continued. "I've worked with him for the last 15 years, and know he loved you and his children more than anything. When he found out what you were doing, it almost killed him. Mark and I helped him through the crisis and made sure he stayed calm enough to make plans to deal with you. We ensured he didn't do anything foolish. Just so you know, he considered self-harm, but we talked him out of it by reminding him of your children. He's with someone else now, and that also helped him through the crisis you caused. It's not important who she is, just that she is with him and will care for him. Derek will not agree to talk to you and doesn't care if you fight the divorce. That will be in my hands, not his. So do what you will, but know that Derek is out of your life and will never be back." She turned and walked back to her car without looking back. She got into the passenger side, and the car drove away. I walked slowly down the driveway to my children, who were standing together beside their cars. I had to face them and listen to their anger and condemnation, but I didn't care anymore. I had betrayed my husband, their father, and I had lost him. Nothing else mattered. Their anger wouldn't make any difference. Nothing they could say or do could hurt more than the words I heard from Dex that morning. God, how they hurt. And all he did was state the truth as he saw it. As I stopped in front of Sam and Chloe, my grief brought me to my knees. Sam reached down to help me stand, but there was no concern on his face. I saw anger, disgust, and disappointment, but no concern. That hurt even more, and I began to sob. Instead of comforting me, my daughter stood in front of me with her arms crossed over her chest, her face mirroring her brother's. I had told myself I couldn't hurt any worse after losing Dex in my marriage, but the looks on my children's faces told me otherwise. I cried for what I had lost as my children stood by, offering no comfort. I had lost them as well. I turned and looked once more at the home decks I had built for our family. I loved that house and had always felt pride when I came home. Now it was gone. Everything was gone. My husband, my marriage, the love of my children, and the home we shared. What have I done? Why did I never think of the consequences of my actions? Now I knew. Consequences are a bitter pill to swallow.